Now, one of the major functions that was asked of us when we were doing Specify 5, developed in Delphi, was some sort of system for people to be able to throw their own worksheets into the database. So take an Excel spreadsheet worth of data that they've just collected in the field, or material that they've got on gift from another collection, and be able to just take that material and throw it into your collection, somehow map it up to the data model, and get it into your collection really easily. And so the programmers developed this thing called the workbench, which is essentially their attempt at trying to solve that problem. It was a pre-release that we released long before Specify 6 as a standalone application using Derby database, which means that you can install it on a USB key and carry it around with you. It requires no installation. You can plug it into a laptop and it'll run without installing anything on the machine. So very applicable for field applications where you're going out in the field and you just want something that will run very easily. It's available on our website for download, and you can use it as a standalone tool, but it is also going to be incorporated into Specify 6 as an integral part of the package. So it allows importing of Excel data into the workbench and then mapping that data up to the existing data model, so that you can map your columns of information up to existing fields in the data model, and thereby very easily take that material and dump it into your database into the correct fields. It also incorporates a whole bunch of data manipulation tools that allow you to manipulate the data in the workbench in terms of georeferencing your stuff, find and replace type functionality, etc. And then, if necessary, re-exporting it into an Excel spreadsheet to play around with it even more, and then putting it back in again. So essentially what that looks like is, this is the data mapping tool. So on the left-hand side here, you have all of your tables and your fields. And then on the right-hand side are all of your columns that are in your Excel spreadsheet. And you basically go through here and you pick which of these fields you want to map up to which of these fields, and it creates a link between your column in your Excel spreadsheet and the field in the database. And once you've mapped all of those fields up correctly, you can then take that information and bring it into your database relatively successfully, depending on how you've mapped it. This is the.
Just a quick question: if you've got things that don't map one-to-one, let's say you've got longitude and latitude stored as degrees, minutes, and seconds. Would that be something you'd have to go ahead and do a calculation in Excel to get?
No, the workbench will accept a whole bunch of different varieties of latitudes and longitudes. There's a whole list of them. You know, it'll accept it in various different formats. And once you bring it into the system accepts all of those different formats as well, or it'll convert it into a format that your database will understand. The mapping tool is very much a flattened version of the data model. Obviously, within the data model, the relational system, you have one-to-many relationships between a number of the tables, like collectors. You have multiple collectors associated with a single object. What this does is it flattens that all out. So you'll have collector last name 1, collector last name 2, collector last name 3, and they'll all have to go in separate columns. But then once you import it in, it'll put all of those things into the relational structure and sort it all out for you. So it's essentially taking a flat piece of information and manipulating it into a relational structure. Okay. So here you have a grid view of the data set that's now been incorporated into the workbench. And you can do all sorts of Excel functionality within this, find and replace, change different things within the system. There's a find and replace function down at the bottom there. You can add new rows, you can delete rows, you can do all sorts of things in the system. Plus you can use all of these ancillary tools down at the bottom, which we'll go through in a second. The other thing that you can do is you can switch across into form view. So you can go in and you can design mini little forms to use in the field. You essentially just grab these fields and drag and drop them on the form to create your own little form with the fields in the distinct way that you want it to be able to enter your data in the field in a form type scenario. You can change the width of the field, you can change the captions, you can do all sorts of things with this form view. Then the other thing that you can do is, using those tools down at the bottom there, is you can augment your data by georeferencing it, by using BioGeomancer, the BioGeomancer web service, or the Geolocate web service. You can go in and it'll do a search on a country, a state, and a county and a locality string, and we'll come back with a match for that particular locality and give you a latitude and longitude for that locality. You can then accept that locality and it'll drop it into your latitude and longitude fields in your workbench and augment your data in that way.
Do you store information on how those coordinates were determined, whether they were BioGeomancer or GPS?
All the necessary fields are there. All of the Manus BioGeomancer protocols are all in there. So the datum and who georeferenced it and all of that sort of stuff can be stored here. The other thing that you can do is you can visualize your data in Google Earth. It takes all of your columns in your spreadsheet and essentially creates a point on the map with a bubble with all of your information. You can pull images through, you can do all sorts of weird and funky things. So you click on the point, which is essentially a collecting event, and it blows up and shows you all of the objects that are collected at the collecting event. You then click on any one of these items and it will bring up all of the data associated with that particular item in Google Earth. You can also then save this as a KML file, and you can ship it off to anybody that you want to be able to share this data with anybody, and they'll be able to see all of this data as well, based on the information that you've brought through into Google Earth. It also has an image capability, and this is specifically for the herbarium folks who are starting to image their herbarium labels and do data entry based on those labels. You can now go in and associate an image with each row in a blank data set and use it as a data entry tool. So you can sit there and have the image open, and you can go in and you can type in all of the necessary information for that particular image. As soon as you hit enter at the end of the row, it goes down to the next row and your next image shows up. So there's actually an image associated with each row, and you can associate multiple images with a single row if you want to. So all of those images of specimens that you're taking in the field that you want to bring back, you can associate them with those particular rows. It also has some very basic reporting tools where you can go in and you can do sort of, the number of families that you collected on a collecting trip, or the number of genera, or number of species. It's a really nice way of checking up that the number of species that you collected on the trip is actually correct, and those sorts of things. So it has a data set summary type tool. It also has graphic capabilities where you can do family counts and all those sorts of things within the system, and pie diagrams for genera, etc. It also has a very basic labeling tool so that you can go in and produce labels in the field if you want to, temporary labels to put on your specimens when you're shipping them back or whatever it may be. And then once this whole thing is integrated into Specify 6 as an integral part of Specify 6, there'll be a little upload button down at the bottom there, and that's your mechanism of getting this data and then sucking it into your database. So once you've augmented it and you've got all of your data sorted out exactly the way that you want it, you then hit the upload button down at the bottom, and essentially what comes up is this little uploading tool down at the bottom. There's a validate button. You go in and hit the validate button, and essentially what that does is it validates the structure of your data, making sure that you have all the linking fields that you need to link all of the tables together. And once it validates and said you're good to go, you hit the upload button, and it'll essentially go in and suck all of this information into your database, and it'll give you an indication of how many records it's created in each of those tables that are affected by the data that you have in your data set. And then that material gets sucked in. Now, one of the issues with the workbench is that it's not completely integrally linked into Specify 6 in the terms that you can't use any of your pick lists or any of your taxonomic authorities to check information. And so you need to make sure that the data that you're putting in is in the correct format so that it matches the format that you have in your database. So if you're sending this out into the field with students, you need to make sure that if there's a field in there that in your database it's a pick list and it has a set number of terms that can be accepted, like sex, male, female, unknown, you need to make sure that they're putting the data in there correctly, or you manipulate that data before you suck it into Specify. Otherwise it's going to give you an error. It won't let you import it if it knows that there are values there that are inconsistent with your existing data.
I have a quick question. So this is talking about uploading an Excel file that you're matching up. But what if you have like 100,000 records and so it's too big to be in Excel? Can you do it?
It's not designed for that. Essentially, it's not designed as a means of creating your database from legacy data.
Right.
There's a 2,000 row limit in the workbench. It's essentially designed for small data sets. It's very memory intensive, and so trying to suck in a 50,000 record set. I mean, Excel has a 63,000 record limit anyway.
Right, yeah. Then that's what I'm saying. If you have a text file,
yeah, trying to suck something like that in, it's going to crash your machine. It's very, very memory intensive, and so it's not designed for that. If you did have scenarios like that, you could either send it to us and we would import it for you, or if you had some in-house capabilities, which I'm sure you guys do, they could do it for you as well.